The oxygen mask dangled above her face like a hanged man's noose, swaying gently to the rhythm of the plane's hum. Claire Whitmore's eyes snapped open, her breath catching in her throat as she registered the silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from sleeping passengers, the kind that presses against eardrums like deep water. She sat up slowly, her neck stiff from the awkward angle she'd fallen asleep in, and looked around the cabin of Flight 227. Empty. Every seat, every row. The overhead lights cast their sterile glow over abandoned blankets, half-empty plastic cups, and a child's stuffed elephant slumped against a window in row 12. But no people, no flight attendants pushing their carts down the narrow aisle, no businessman tapping furiously on his laptop, no crying babies, nothing. Claire's heart began to hammer against her ribs. She unbuckled her seatbelt with trembling fingers and stood, her knees weak, her mouth dry as cotton. The plane was still flying. She could feel the slight turbulence, the steady drone of the engines. But the cabin was a ghost town. Hello? Her voice came out as a croak. She cleared her throat and tried again, louder this time. Hello? Is anyone here? The silence swallowed her words whole. She moved into the aisle, gripping the seat backs for balance as she made her way toward the front of the plane. Her heels clicked against the floor, each step echoing in the empty space. The galley was deserted, the curtain to first class hanging open like an invitation. She pushed through, and that's when she saw him. A man sat in seat 4B, his hands folded neatly in his lap, staring straight ahead at the seat in front of him. He wore a dark suit, perfectly pressed, and his salt and pepper hair was combed back from his forehead. He didn't turn when she approached, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. "Excuse me," Claire said, her voice sharper now, laced with something between relief and panic. "Where is everyone? What's going on?" The man turned his head slowly, and when his eyes met hers, Claire felt ice slide down her spine. His eyes were calm, too calm, like a priest delivering last rites. "You should sit down," he said quietly. His voice had a strange quality to it, like it was coming from very far away, even though he was right in front of her. "I asked you a question. Where is everyone?" "Gone." "Gone where? This plane is still in the air. Did they evacuate somehow? Is this an emergency?" The man in seat 4B smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "In a manner of speaking, yes, though not the kind you're thinking of." Claire's pulse quickened. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more horrifying than the last. Hijacking, gas leak, mass hallucination. She took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for her phone in her jacket pocket. No signal. Of course there was no signal. They were 35,000 feet over the Atlantic. "I'm going to the cockpit," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to speak to the pilot." "I wouldn't do that if I were you." "Why not?" The man's expression didn't change. "Because there's no one there. There hasn't been for hours." Claire's breath came faster now, shallow and sharp. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. She'd boarded Flight 227 at Heathrow just after midnight, settled into her seat in business class, declined the flight attendant's offer of champagne, and closed her eyes for what was supposed to be a quick nap before her presentation in Manhattan. 45 years old, a senior partner at her consulting firm, she'd made this trip 100 times. This was routine. This was normal. But nothing about this was normal. "Who are you?" she demanded. "My name is Thomas," the man said. Thomas Reeves. I was sitting here when we took off, just like you were sitting back there in 12A. How do you know where I was sitting? Because I've been watching you sleep for the last 3 hours. He said it matter-of-factly, without malice, but the words made Claire's skin crawl. You were the only other one left after it happened. After what happened? Thomas tilted his head, studying her face like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. The crash, Claire. We crashed. About 4 hours ago, give or take. The world tilted. Claire grabbed the nearest seat back to steady herself. That's insane. We're still flying. I can feel the engines. We didn't crash. Are you sure about that? She wanted to scream at him, to shake him, to force him to make sense. Instead, she turned and walked toward the cockpit, her legs moving on autopilot. The door was closed, locked. She pounded on it with her fist. Open up, this is an emergency. No response. She tried the handle, locked tight. Thomas's voice drifted from behind her. They can't hear you. No one can. Not anymore. Claire spun around. Stop it. Just stop. This is some kind of sick joke. You're a hijacker, aren't you? You did something to the crew, to the passengers, and now you're playing mind games with me. If I were a hijacker, what would be my end game? Thomas asked, his tone infuriatingly reasonable. We're over the ocean. There's nowhere to land, no demands to make, no leverage to use. Then what do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, Claire. I'm just trying to help you understand where we are. And where is that exactly? Thomas stood slowly, smoothing his suit jacket as he rose. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd spent a lifetime making difficult decisions. We're in between, he said softly. Not quite here, not quite there. Purgatory, some might call it, a holding place. Claire laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Purgatory, right, because I'm dead. We both are. No. She shook her head violently. No, I'm not dead. I can feel my heart beating. I can feel the air conditioning on my skin. Dead people don't feel things. Don't they? Thomas took a step closer. Tell me something, Claire. Do you remember the turbulence before you fell asleep? She frowned, searching her memory. There had been turbulence, hadn't there? The seatbelt sign had come on. The captain had made an announcement, something about rough air ahead. But the details were fuzzy, like trying to remember a dream. It was bad, Thomas continued, his voice low and hypnotic. Worse than anything I'd experienced in 30 years of flying. The plane dropped, people screamed. Oxygen masks fell from the ceiling, and then... He paused, his eyes distant. And then everything went quiet, just like this. Claire's hands were shaking now. She pressed them against her thighs to stop the trembling. You're lying. You have to be lying. Am I? Then explain the empty plane. Explain why there's no pilot. Explain why your phone has no signal even though we should be well within satellite range by now. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. You do know. You just don't want to accept it. She backed away from him, her mind fracturing into 1,000 pieces. This couldn't be happening. She had a meeting tomorrow morning at 9. She had a daughter in college who needed her to wire money for textbooks. She had a life. A real, tangible, messy life. My daughter, she said suddenly. Emma. I need to call her. I need to let her know I'm okay. Thomas's expression softened. You can't, not from here. Stop saying that, Claire's voice cracked. Stop acting like we're dead. We're not dead. This is just, it's a nightmare, a hallucination. Maybe there was a gas leak. Maybe we're both unconscious, and this is all in my head. If it were in your head, would I know about Emma? Thomas asked gently. Would I know that she's studying psychology at Cornell? That you missed her 20th birthday last month because of a merger deal in Singapore? That you've been carrying guilt about that like a stone in your chest ever since? Claire's blood ran cold. How do you know that? Because here, in this place, the walls between us are thinner. We see each other more clearly than we ever did in life. He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. You've spent the last 20 years building walls, Claire. Around your heart, around your time, around everything that mattered. You told yourself it was for Emma, to give her a better life. But really, it was because you were afraid. Afraid of what? Of being like your mother, dependent, weak, trapped. Thomas's words cut like scalpels, precise and merciless. So, you built an empire of spreadsheets and client meetings and red-eye flights. You built a fortress, but fortresses are lonely places. Tears stung Claire's eyes. You don't know anything about me. Don't I? He gestured around the empty cabin. Why do you think you're here? Why do you think the plane is empty except for us? I don't know. Because we're the same, you and I. We both spent our lives running. I ran from a failed marriage, from 2 sons who needed a father, from every hard conversation I should have had but didn't. I filled my life with work, with travel, with anything that kept me from sitting still long enough to feel the weight of my choices. He paused, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. And now we're here, in the in-between, faced with the one thing we can't run from. What's that? The truth. Claire sank into the nearest seat, her legs unable to hold her anymore. The truth. What was the truth? She tried to remember boarding the plane, tried to remember the flight attendant's face, the safety demonstration, the taste of the coffee she'd ordered, but the memories were gauze, translucent and uncertain. I remember the turbulence, she said slowly. It was violent. The plane shook like it was coming apart. And then there was this sound, like metal tearing, and the oxygen masks dropped. Her breath hitched. I reached for mine. I remember my fingers closing around it. But I couldn't get it over my face fast enough. The cabin pressure. It was dropping. I could feel it in my ears and my lungs, and then, nothing, just darkness and cold. She looked up at Thomas, her eyes wide with dawning horror. Oh God, we really did crash, didn't we? Thomas nodded slowly. I think so. Yes. But how can we be here? How can the plane still be flying? Maybe it's not. Maybe this is just our minds trying to make sense of what happened. Or maybe it's something else, something we don't have words for. He sat down across the aisle from her, his movements careful and deliberate. All I know is that I woke up an hour before you did. The plane was empty then too. I walked every row, checked every bathroom, banged on the cockpit door until my hands were bruised. And then I sat down and waited. Waited for what? For someone else to wake up, for you. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I think we're here because we're not ready to let go, not yet. There are things unsaid, things undone. Claire thought of Emma, her beautiful, fierce daughter with her father's eyes and her mother's stubborn streak. The daughter she'd raised alone after David left. The daughter she'd worked 60-hour weeks to provide for. The daughter she'd somehow lost somewhere along the way to spreadsheets and corner offices. I never told her I was proud of her, Claire said, her voice breaking. Not enough. I was always pushing her to do better, to aim higher, to be stronger. I thought that's what a mother was supposed to do, but I never just told her she was enough. Exactly as she was. Then tell her now. How? If we're dead? Maybe we're not. Not entirely. Not yet. Thomas stood and moved to the window, looking out at the darkness beyond. Maybe this is a chance. A last chance to set things right before we cross over completely. Claire rose on shaky legs and joined him at the window. Outside, there was nothing but black. No stars, no moon, no lights from cities below. Just an endless velvet void. What do we do? She asked. We let go, Thomas said simply. We say the things we need to say. We forgive ourselves for the time we wasted and the people we hurt, and then we move on. Claire closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw Emma's face, saw her smile, heard her laugh. She imagined calling her, hearing her voice one more time. I love you, Emma, she whispered into the darkness. I'm so proud of you. You are enough. You've always been enough. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to earn my love. You had it from the moment you were born. You'll always have it. The words hung in the air, suspended in the strange stillness of the cabin. And as Claire spoke them, she felt something shift, a lightness in her chest, a release. Thomas was crying now, silent tears tracking down his weathered face. I'm sorry, Michael. I'm sorry, James. I should have been there. I should have been a better father. I was scared, and I ran, and that was wrong. You deserved better. You deserved everything. The plane began to shake. Gently at first, then more violently. The lights flickered. Claire grabbed Thomas's hand, and he squeezed back, his grip firm and warm. Is this it? She asked. Is this the end? I think it's the beginning, Thomas said. Or maybe just the next part, I don't know. But I'm not afraid anymore, are you? Claire thought about it. Thought about Emma, grown and strong and capable. Thought about the life she'd lived, flawed and messy and real. Thought about all the things she'd done right and all the things she'd done wrong, and how in the end, maybe none of it mattered as much as the love. No, she said, I'm not afraid. The shaking intensified. The darkness outside the windows began to change, shifting from black to gray to something else, something like light. Whatever comes next, Thomas said, thank you for being here, for not letting me face it alone. Thank you for waking me up, Claire replied, for helping me see. The light grew brighter, warmer, until it filled the entire cabin. Claire felt herself lifting, weightless, free. She heard music, faint and distant, voices calling. Emma's voice among them saying, Mom, Mom, can you hear me? And then, with a final, gentle lurch, everything went white. In a hospital room in Halifax, Claire Whitmore's eyes fluttered open. Machines beeped steadily around her. A doctor leaned over, shining a light in her eyes. Welcome back, Miss Whitmore, the doctor said. You've been in a coma for 3 days. Your plane went down over the Atlantic. You're one of only 2 survivors. Claire's lips moved, trying to form words. The other survivor, she managed to whisper. Is his name Thomas? The doctor's expression shifted to something like wonder. Thomas Reeves, yes, he's down the hall. He woke up about an hour before you did. Claire closed her eyes and smiled. They hadn't been dead after all, but they'd been close enough to learn what mattered. And sometimes, that's all the grace a person needs.
The scripted casebook remains open. Subscribe to the archive. Share the evidence. Leave your verdict below. Some secrets are better shared.